The new Genji meta is here, and there's big changes to heroes and the game as a whole in the Season 23 patch. So let's break it on down and give you insight so you know exactly what you need to do to succeed this season. Speaking of success, GameLeap.com is your one-stop shop to guarantee success in your Overwatch journey. If you want to climb to Plat, Diamond, Masters, Grandmasters, or even beyond, go check out GameLeap.com in the links down below and start your journey to become broken. So the first big thing that we have to cover is Genji's rise to dominance. Hail to the king, baby. I never thought I would hear those words talking about Genji. Genji is the second most played DPS in Plat, the most played DPS in Diamond, the second most played DPS in Masters, and barely the third most played DPS in GM. Now, compared to all the previous play and win rates of Genji, this is an astronomical change. And it's not just his pick rate with a low win rate either, no. His win rate in Plat starts at about 52%, and it's almost all the way up to 57% in GM, with it being exponentially higher the higher in rank Genji goes. You see, Genji is finally in a great position after a long time of being garbage tier. He can get value without Blade now and is no longer a Blade bot, and he has a positive 1v1 matchup against almost every single squishy in the game if you play him mechanically well. Ana and Genji duo stocks at an all-time high, so if you're a Genji player or an Ana player, find yourself that counterpart and start to farm the ladder as the best duo in the game right now. With the new armor change for Brig, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, in some ways it's better and in some ways it's worse for Genji. He can't be pocket packed anymore, but at the lower ranks that wasn't really happening that much in the first place. But in general, Brig was the one character that kept Genji down, and Brig is going to be worse across the board, which is definitely an even greater increase for Genji. Now, the good news is that there are still very powerful characters in an environment where Genji is good. DPS like Echo, Pharah, Ashe, and Double Shield is still strong, keeping Genji in check, but I'm going to talk about all that a little bit more later when I talk about the hero changes in the new live patch. Now, the next bit of news that we have to cover before we move on is that SR placements are vastly different than they used to be. SR placements are now capped. You can only reach 3900 SR now. No matter what your SR was before, you will physically not place over 3900 SR. Now, if you are a legit 39 or 3800 SR player, don't fear, because you're not just going to suddenly get 4600 pro players in your games. The MMR is still going to be the same, which is the match ranking behind the scenes, so you will not suddenly get insane players in your game. Now, you might be asking, if it's based on MMR and you're not going to get them in your games anyways, then why do this at all? Well, what this actually does is it forces higher level players to grind to get their accounts to where they want to, and it will prevent stagnation instead of just placing an account and parking at the higher ranks and never playing it. This is going to increase the quality of matches. Streamers are going to be grinding more, which means there's going to be more content for us. This is just a win-win all around, and it actually fixes a lot of the problems that come with a lack of there being decay, because that's a big problem for the higher ranks with there being no decay. A lot of these higher ranks get really gummed up, but now you at least have to fight for it and prove that you can actually win your way up to the SR that you deserve, so that is something to keep in mind. Now, an inverse effect of this could lead to some increase in toxicity because no one knows who was actually a high-rated player with the Masters logo or a low-rated player, but it also could lead to less toxicity because no one actually knows, so you can't get roasted when they don't actually know what level you really are. Interesting, but something to note. Moving on to the bread and butter of the video, we need to talk about hero changes and the change implications in your ranked matches. First off, Ashe got a cooldown increase on her dynamite from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. Now, this is not a huge deal, but it will decrease her splash damage and her ultimate generation. This is probably not going to decrease her power level altogether that much. Ashe is extremely powerful, especially with the Mercy Pocket, but with Genji stocks going up and Diva's buff, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, Ashe is going to be better kept in check, but in the double shield meta, she's still going to be pretty powerful, so keep that in mind. Ashe is still a great pick. Now, moving on to the Brig nerfs that we touched on before, there's no longer going to be any armor overheal. You throw your armor pack on somebody when they're at full health, they're not going to get any more armor or overheal, which is going to be a lot weaker for pocketing DPS and letting them take duels, which was Brig's predominant strategy at the higher levels, even though a lot of people at the lower levels never really utilized this to its maximum potential. Now, in order to offset this, Brig's shield total health increased from 200 to 250, but its its rate of regeneration decreased from 100 to 85 per second, and when it gets destroyed, the cooldown is from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. Now essentially here is 3 nerfs with one 50 HP shield buff. This is just an overall giant nerf for Brig. This is incredibly punishing for players who try to use shield to face tank too much damage instead of blocking and bursting cooldowns, because once you get that shield destroyed, or even if it just takes damage, it's not going to regenerate as fast, and the destroyed cooldown is massive. This makes Brig overall weaker. It just makes her easier to punish and overall weaker, which almost makes her design lazy, which is pretty sad to say the least. This does make Lucio's stocks rise a little bit, but Brig is still going to be great versus Dive and with the Brawl, meaning that she should still see tons of play. In fact, she was pretty OP before in her win rates, and I don't expect her to just fall off the map because of these changes. That being said, however, because specifically of the fact that you can't armor pack overheal DPS, she will probably see far less play in a dive composition, even though she was seeing a lot of play in a dive composition before, because like I said before, she could enable the DPS to go in really aggressively and win a lot of matchups and start the snowball. Now moving on to the next patch change, we got to talk about D.Va, who was buffed pretty substantially. Fusion cannons, movement, reduction from 50% to 40%, which is gonna be nice. It's not something huge, but it is going to help her chase down targets a little bit better. Her defense matrix went down from 1.5 second cooldown to 1 second cooldown. This has been changed all over the place since the beginning. It is absolutely bonkers. What is power creep anyways? This goes to show that Genji and D.Va are just, they flew too close to the sun and they got too good early. Every other character got buffed to overcome it, and now these characters are just buffed to stronger than they ever were at the beginning. So that's just kind of funny. Power creep is going to be a constant thing in this game, and my general design philosophy is that buffs are better than nerfs, but that's not for this video. That's an argument for another time. But keep in mind that Genji and D.Va are pretty obvious signs of power creep in the game. Now, D.Va being buffed and the increase in DM is going to be great versus hit scans and characters like Ashe with pockets. Having more defense matrix means you could shut these characters down a lot better, and it's gonna mean that dive is gonna be more enabled, specifically Monkey D.Va dive, especially with Genji being way more powerful, Tracer gonna be way more powerful, specifically because Brig is gonna be weaker. These are all little factors coming together where I could see a dive meta being pretty close to viable. Now, hit scans across the board are gonna be hurt by this, but also, I say this a lot, but bad divas don't counter hit scans at all. D.Va's a very difficult character to master, so you're not gonna start to feel the oppressiveness of this change until you get to like Diamond or above. Really, that's where D.Va players really know how to utilize this change to its maximum effectiveness. Now, the change in micro missiles from 0.5 seconds to 0.25 seconds is just a slight buff, but it's gonna be more direct burst, which is gonna be good for D.Va overall. It's gonna make her a little bit more lethal. So D.Va's definitely going to be better, and her natural combo is with Winston, but I'm interested where this puts Wrecking Ball in the meta. We're going to have to wait and see on that one. Now, the last big change that we have for you is Junkrat. Now, the trigger on his concussion blast, his concussion mines, is from 0.156 seconds to 0.1 seconds. This means that you can double mine again and use it for mobility. So you see, no one at Blizzard is a high-level Junkrat main, and when they tried to buff the rat, they actually nerfed him instead because the first mine launched you too fast to where you couldn't second mine again, or else you had to slow down midair, which made you really vulnerable. Shout out to PvP who found this out. He's like the Junkrat god, but essentially they actually nerfed him when they tried to buff him, which is pretty funny, but they fixed it here. On top of that, they actually made it to where you can control Junkrat post ultimate. Before, there was a 1.5 second delay between the time that you exploded your rip tire and the time you got to control your character, but now it's 0.9 seconds, which is a 0.6 second change, which is a pretty big deal because that was a pretty big window of time where you could get chased down by something like a Genji or Junkrat. You can get right out of your ultimate a little bit quicker, use your double mines and get out of there and not get killed or not just trade with your ult. GameLeap.com is your best resource if you want to learn how to pop off with any of these characters. We're going to start pumping out way more advanced guides and concepts, especially when Overwatch 2 releases later this year. So definitely jump right in right now and you'll have all the tools to level up your game. Anyways, that's all we got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time.